All right, and welcome back to another episode of Phrasing FM, a podcast where I talk about languages and my experience building an app to learn them. Today, I want to talk about the word fluency, the bane of my existence. So, fluency is obviously a very topical word for any language learner, and especially any language learning application. But fluency means so many different things that it's lost basically all meaning. Not entirely. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's lost so much of its meaning. It is a word hundreds of years old that has always been used to refer to languages, or it has since the beginning. Not every instance of it refers to languages. But since the beginning, it's been used to describe languages. And originally, it was a qualitative measure. It was how fluidly did you speak? How at ease were you when you were speaking? Could you understand words easily? Could you string them together without pauses? Did it flow like water when you spoke? And we fast forward through a couple hundred years, and now it still means that. So, how fluently did you say that? Although I guess these days we will maybe use how eloquently did you say that? Although that could be about your word choice and not just your prosody. But now it is also a quantitative measure. So, are you fluent yet? Have you reached fluency? This is a destination as if it is measurable. Like, have you gotten to this end goal where you are fluent? And one of the trickiest things about fluency is not just this qualitative versus quantitative distinction, but I think because of this, everybody has kind of a different definition of what fluency is. Some people think it's just a vibe. At some point, you speak in a manner that is considered fluent. Other people think, no, you have to reach 3,000 words, and that's when you're officially fluent. Other people look to specific tests. So there is the CEFR language tests, and there are 6 levels that go in a little bit of a strange order, but A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, where the A group is kind of the beginner, the B group is the intermediate, and the C group is the advanced/expert/proficient. And most language learners will agree that fluency is somewhere around a high B1 to a high B2. Almost nobody these days will argue that you need to get to a C level to be considered fluent in a language. And so, for the sake of ease of math, let's put it directly in between B1 and B2, because that puts it exactly halfway through the scale. Now, some people rank it a little bit higher, some people rank it right here. So we'll just go with the easy one for the math, but it could be as high as, I don't know, maybe 60% of the way through the scale. But if it's halfway through the scale, going from any one of these levels, A1 to A2 versus A2 to B1 versus B1 to B2, takes about twice as much time. So it takes substantially less input to go from A1 to B2 than it does B1 to B2, than it does C1 to C2. And so what I'm getting at is that this fluency point is not even halfway on the language learning scale. This fluency metric is maybe 25% of the way through the scale. I mean, it depends on where your end goal is. Most people, when they want to learn a foreign language, they're probably in their heads only thinking of a high B2. Other people, they might be thinking more of a C1 level. Very few people are really thinking of a C2 level when they think of learning a foreign language. And yet, for so many people, when they start, they treat fluency like the end line. They treat it like the finish line. Like, this is the be all end all. This is when you know you've made it. Once you're fluent, then you're done. And it's so strange because some people think it's a vibe. Some people think it's a number. Most people think it's a finish line. Yet most people would agree you've reached it when you're a quarter way through your journey. And it's crazy how little this word has come to mean, but how pervasive it is in language. And so that's my little rant about fluency. You know, it's we personally, I feel like there needs to be stronger words than fluent. I think fluency is a lost cause. We're never going to get it back. It's always going to be meaningless, even if we all started using it correctly. And I'm not saying there is a correct way to use it, but if we all agreed on the correct way to use it, and then we all used it correctly, it still has so many misconceptions to it. But I wish there was words above and below fluency. Like currently, there's only really one. We kind of invented conversationally fluent, and on the lower end of the spectrum. But I feel like I haven't heard conversationally fluent in a while. And on the CEFR, the grading scale, the C levels, they talk about proficiency and expertise, which I think would be great terms. Except I feel like I've heard people say I'm not fluent. I'm proficient, but I'm not fluent, which is inverting the whole scale. But I feel like we need to say, I'm fluent in the language, but I'm not blank. And I don't know what that blank needs to be, but I'm not an expert in the language. I'm not professional in the language. I'm not a high level in the language. Or, we need to have more words, I feel like, to put fluency in its place, just so we stop treating it as this holy grail of language learning. We stop treating it as the finish line. We stop treating it as a measure. We stop treating it as a vibe. And at this point, based off of how little it means, I do think fluency is just a vibe. I think very few people are definitionally fluent. I think when you learn a language, you get to be fluent in certain subjects. Almost everybody gets to be fluent in saying where they're from or why they're learning a language or how long they've been learning a language. But, not everybody's fluent enough to be able to discuss aerodynamics. Even if you have a C1 or even a C2 in a language, maybe a C2 in a language, you'd have to be able to discuss this. But there will always be areas of the language that you are not fluent in. There are areas of your own language that you aren't, like your native language, that you aren't fluent in. And that's just even more stark in foreign languages. So again, that's my rant about fluency. I could rant about this all day, but I'm going to wrap this up. Moral of the story, it's a wishy-washy word. I think it means a lot less than people think it means, and I think people put way too much stock in the word fluency. So consider being more eloquent with your speech. Try out some other words. Help me come up with solutions for other words that we can use. How do you describe your language learning? What words do you use? What words do you wish people used to describe fluency better? When do you consider yourself fluent? All of this I'd love to hear in the comments down below. If you'd like this video, consider subscribing, liking, sharing with any of your polyglot friends. And if you're interested in learning languages, then check out Phrasing.app. It's a language learning app that I've been building now for 3 years, hence the reason I'm so obsessed with things like why do we call it fluency? But it's available to be used. I've been using it now for over a day to learn many languages, and I enjoy it every single day. So give it a shot. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Ciao.